Let me ask you a question, friends. Are you a beginning watercolor artist, or have you ever thought about painting watercolor? Well, you're in the right place. Today I want to share with you a step-by-step tutorial to learn the process that I take even when painting small birds. And this is a process that you can actually apply to any watercolor process. So welcome aboard and let's get started. Just to give you an idea, I broke this down into 7 easy steps. This way you can follow along and understand this process. Now, step number 1 is even before you touch any pigment or paint. This is simple shapes are important at first. So before we even touch the paint, every small bird can be broken down into really 3 simple shapes. Oval for the body, a circle or smaller oval for the head, and then kind of a tiny triangle for the beak. And really, that's it. Don't worry about the feathers yet. Don't worry about the details. If your bird looks a little lumpy at the stage, don't worry about it. That's totally fine. Cute birds are supposed to be a little round and a little awkward. So even light pencil lines is all you really need. Think of a suggestion, not really drawing a portrait. Now, if you have a good reference that I do in these examples, use that as a guide for your pencil drawing. One very simple way to transfer your reference to your watercolor page is tracing it through a bright light, or really even using a window, and use the sun as your bright light. Step number 2 is paint in your whites. These are a few different ways that you can paint in your whites, or simply put it, plan on where your whites will be. With watercolor, it's important to understand where the whites are going to be because you have to paint intentionally knowing that beforehand, and that's why it's important. It's also important to know to keep whites in your painting because that adds greater contrast and more interest to your painting. Whites are more bright, and if you put it to something dark, it even increases its value. And it goes the same way. If you put a dark next to something that's white, your dark will look better. Having a bunch of gray really isn't that interesting. Now, there are different ways to actually accomplish this. You can use masking fluid, masking tape, stickers is a great way, painting around the white of the page, or a lifting process. Lifting is where after you've painted, go back with a clean brush and clean water and remove the paint from your picture. Now we're on to step number 3. After you have your light sketch and you know where your whites are going to be, you want to apply the first wash, which is really light and loose. Start with clean water. That's important to understand. And then drop in very light washes of your main colors. This is really just the base layer. With watercolor, you're actually adding layer upon layer to get the textures you're hoping for. So the big 2 rules here is start wetter than you think, and number 2 is let the water do the work. Watercolor really gets lighter as it dries, so always remember it's okay to add more after, but it's really hard to take it away after it's on the page. At this stage, don't worry about the details, don't worry about painting the eyes or the feathers or the markings. We're simply blocking in color and letting the paint flow. Step number 4 is remember to let it dry. Yes, really. This is actually probably the most boring part is don't touch your painting, let it dry. If you paint details too soon, everything will be blurred together and turn muddy. Dry paper will equal clean details. Now you can let it naturally dry on its own, which might take a couple of hours, or you can even use a hair dryer to speed up the process. But you want to make sure that your page is completely dry before adding details. I usually take this a moment, to work on another painting, work on another project, sometimes even run carpool, but watercolor is rewarding if you're patient. Step number 5 is adding form and shadows. Once it's dry, this is where your bird starts to feel alive. Using slightly darker version of your base color, you're adding shadows under the belly. You're darkening the darker areas, the black of the wing area. You're also adding the suggestion of where the feathers are overlapping. As you do this process, your bird will become more alive because you're adding details into the overall shapes. Notice that I said suggested. We're not painting every single feather. We're just adding some soft shapes to show the form. Less detail actually can make small birds look a little cuter and more expressive and realistic than trying to paint every single feather. Step number 6, working on the face. Keep it simple. Now for the face. If the eyes are too big and the bird looks shocked, if it's too small, then it's going to look sleepy. So a simple dot will create more personality than you think. Most eyes will have a highlight also in the eye. This is a small but very important thing to remember to add this highlight. One white dot in the eye. And the beak, following the shape of the bird of your painting, oftentimes the beak needs to be darker and sharper than the rest of the body. Most of the bird is a soft, but the feet and the beak are the exceptions. Make sure they have greater detail. Don't overwork the face, but that's actually one of the fastest ways to lose the charm of your little bird. Step number 7 is final details and repeating the process. This is where most beginners will go too far. What I mean by this is you want to add layers upon layers and following the process, building up the shape of your birds. Now there's a certain point when you're going along in the painting that you'll feel like that the painting looks good and that you should stop. Oftentimes, I'll just work a little bit longer and then stop to not overwork the process. Make sure that the details in the feet and the beak or the branch or the suggestive other areas have been worked on so it looks like a completed piece. Maybe even add just 1 or 2 darker accents to where your dark area is. Other things that I do that I recommend is I put the painting up kind of across the room so I can look at it at a distance to see where greater value and contrast can be added in. So if you're thinking, should I add one more thing? That's usually a good time to say, hey, I'm almost done, and put it on the shelf for a bit. Some of my favorite birds from the 12 bird series that I worked on were ones that I didn't overthink and I just let them speak for themselves. Hey, the big takeaway here today is even you can follow this simple process and paint wonderful watercolor. Thanks so much for watching. If you're new, remember to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any new watercolor tips. Hey, let's pick up our brushes and start painting.